Alrighty, welcome in everyone to just another edition of Just Another College Football Podcast. I'm your host, as always, Tommy Brzee. It's Tuesday, November 25th, and we got some rivalry games to pick. We have a ton of games to get to. We'll start with the big games as I see it. Texas A&M. We'll get to Ohio State, Michigan. We'll talk about Vandy, Tennessee, a very, very big game this weekend that could very well change the CFP picture. Could also just make it a little bit more murky in that bubble area. Then we'll get to all the upset alerts: Oklahoma, Virginia, Georgia, Oregon, and a number of other teams staring down a little bit of a barrel with their CFP lives on the line. In a lot of cases, especially in Ole Miss, that Egg Bowl is going to be very, very interesting on Friday. And then we'll get to a little bit of a whip around. We got Utah fighting for their lives against Kansas. We have Arizona State, a great one. Miami, Pitt, a very huge matchup over there in the ACC, and a number of other games that we just got to talk about on Rivalry Weekend, although they might not have quite the juice that they used to have, at least in past years. But let's start with the big games. I have three games that I've highlighted as kind of the massive games of this weekend. You could add in Georgia Tech, absolutely. Little bit of wind taken out of the sails with Georgia Tech going down to Pitt last week, but let's go ahead and jump into this. Let's start with the Lone Star Showdown. Number 3, Texas A&M on the road at number 17, Texas. This one's going to be Friday night. They moved it off of Thanksgiving when it came back. I like it on Friday night. I'll be totally honest. I don't really mind it not being on Thanksgiving night regardless. It's an incredible game. It's going to be an incredible one down there in Austin. Can't imagine a lot of people guess that this would be the idea, or that this would be the dynamic walking into this football game. A&M looking to go undefeated. Texas trying to play the spoiler. I think they probably would have flipped those. If you asked me in the preseason, I definitely would have flipped those. But at the end of the day, it is going to be a great game. A lot of people talking about Texas possibly backing their way into the playoff. I think about 11 or 12 different things have to happen for the Longhorns to have a shot, and then it's still up in the air. So I'll leave that to the side for the time being. I don't think it's worth talking about until maybe BYU loses this weekend or Miami falls, or a number of teams, frankly, in front of Texas fall. So we'll leave that to the side for the time being. The Texas offense has started to find its footing. It really has started to play much better the last couple of weeks. It comes down to Arch Manning playing a whole lot better. Now, when you're playing the Arkansas defense, you'll find a whole lot of open receivers. That's not the case with Vanderbilt, and he looked incredibly good against that defense. Now you play one of the top 30 defenses in the country with one of the most terrifying pass rushers in the entire country, Cassius Howell. Can Texas block him? They have not been good in pass protection pretty much all year. They've slowly gotten better. There's still multiple moments where Arch Manning is just having to create on his own, having to throw guys off his shoulder. Did about 3 or 4 times against Arkansas where one guy just pretty much had a free rush and he sidesteps him and makes a great throw. He's probably going to have to do that in this game. Cassius Howell is going to get home a couple of times. The rest of Texas A&M as well. Cassius Howell just kind of the marquee name of that group. On the other side, the marquee name is Colin Simmons. That is going to be a massive player in this football game. Can A&M slow him down? Because not a whole lot of teams have been able to. Marcel Reed's legs are going to be massive in this football game. If Colin Simmons, if Ethan Burke, if those edge rushers can keep him contained, maybe you force a couple of mistakes. We saw it happen against South Carolina when he had a couple of guys in his face early in that game. Really did struggle to put the ball on his receivers. Now he's going to have one of the best pass rushers in the country, and Colin Simmons coming after him. It's probably the 2 best pass rushers in the country. Now, David Bailey has a very good argument over there at Texas Tech. These guys are absolutely ridiculous, and it's probably going to be them trading punches for a lot of this game. But for A&M, you got to find a way to run the ball, especially early in this football game. Texas only giving up less than 100 yards on the ground per game this year. If they can't get the run game going and at least make the Texas back end not have as many guys in the back end as they could, I think Marcel Reed's going to struggle. I think there's going to be a couple of moments if they can drop 7 into coverage and have success stopping the run regardless. It's probably going to be a long day. It's going to be a lot of tight windows, a lot of really tough throws, and a lot of Pete Kwiatkowski kind of playing with his eyes. If you can run the football, obviously you bring way more guys down into the box, then you open up those big plays that have made the Texas A&M offense so scary this year. But this is going to be a battle. Texas A&M has a couple of advantages as far as I'm concerned, mainly their pass rush against the Texas offensive line. I don't think the same advantage exists when you talk about the Texas pass rush against the A&M offensive line, although there are still some openings there. How good is this Texas defense? It has been very, very rough the last couple of weeks. They've missed coverages. They've let not great teams kind of just put up points on them pretty much at will. Now, I don't want to say not great teams. solid offenses, but not elite teams as a whole, put up a ton of points on them. What does A&M do? If they find openings in this defense the way that Arkansas did, the way that Mississippi State did early in that football game, the way Georgia and Vanderbilt did, what is this thing going to look like? Is it just Casey Concepcion, Mario Craver, and all those receivers running wild? Or is Texas able to dial in and have their best defensive performance of the year? Because that's probably what they're going to need in this football game. One of the X factors in this game, and you'll hear it talked about on the broadcast, I promise you, punt return. As trivial as that might sound, Casey Concepcion and Ryan Niblett can change the game. When they touch the football, you're probably going to have a couple souvenirs in this football game. These punters are going to be told, put it out of bounds or put it way up in the air, because we cannot have these guys returning punts all day, or one of them is going to change the football game. Who it's going to be, I don't know. It might just come down to which punter does a worse job of getting that ball up in the air and allowing his gunners to get down there. I've gone back and forth on this football game. Texas A&M has been incredible all year, and I think there's something happening around this football game that we'll see kind of play out throughout this entire week. We'll see if I'm actually right about this. I think a lot of people are picking Texas because they can't imagine Texas A&M being undefeated. They can't imagine an Aggies team going through the month of November totally clean and playing a perfect season. I can imagine it. I think Mike Norvell has changed this team. I think he's changed this program. I'm leaning Texas A&M 24-23. I actually think this is kind of a defensive battle. As crazy as that sounds, I think these two pass rushes are absolutely nasty. I think these two quarterbacks might make a couple of mistakes. I think this one's going to be a fight. I'm going to lean Texas A&M 24-23 to win this game. If you talk to me on Thursday, I might have a different pick. I'll be totally honest with you. I think this one's very much up in the air, but I think some people aren't picking A&M because they just can't imagine a 12-0 next to the Aggies' name. I think Mike Elko started a new era over there in College Station, and I think it starts in Austin on Friday night. Then we move to the big one. The game, Ohio State at Michigan. Ohio State favored by 9.5 going into this football game, over under at 44.5. It's probably going to be something of a rock fight, as you can imagine. I was shortchanging it by a lot there. 2,191 days. That's how long it's been. That's how long it will be, I should say, when these two teams face off since Ohio State has beaten Michigan. It sounds crazy to say. I'll be totally honest. It still sounds crazy to say, but Ryan Day has a mental block here. Ohio State has a mental block here. We see it with Georgia and Alabama. We might be seeing it develop with Texas and Georgia. A number of different examples of this around the sport. This is a huge one. It is a huge one for Ohio State. There are a lot of debate going on around the Ohio State circles, around every circle in college football. What would this look like? If they were to lose this game, what would the reaction look like? How would the fan base react? I get it. You got the national championship even losing this game a year ago, so maybe the reaction wouldn't be as aggressive. I promise you. This one has an aggression, this one has a hatred, this one has a passion that is a little bit different. Now, I don't get all caught up in the Ohio State and Michigan is far and away the best rivalry in college football, but I'm telling you this one's a little bit different. And I'm telling you every Ohio State fan badly wants to win this football game, and even if they lose, if they go on to win the national title, if they lose this game, it's a sour taste in their mouth, much like last year, and I think a lot of Ohio State fans would tell you that. So this one's going to be a fight. Now, the other question of that, a little bit more practical of a football question, easier to answer, will Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate play? I tend to believe the answer is yes. I think they won't be 100%, is kind of the big thing here. Michigan's got a really young secondary, so what does that look like? If Jeremiah Smith is 80%, I think we all agree that's still probably one of the best wide receivers in the country, and Michigan's young DBs have to handle that the entire game. But the question is clear. Let's just be totally honest. This game comes down to a lot of different things. It really comes down to, has Ryan Day gotten over that mental hurdle? Did last year finally whip him into shape and tell him that you are not going to beat Michigan playing Michigan's way? You're not going to beat Michigan keeping the ball on the ground, shortening a football game, and allowing them to play on their terms. You spread the football around. You're Ohio State. You have the best receivers in the country. You have one of the best quarterbacks in the country that could very well be in New York City this time next month. The reality is, this is a game that you just have to get out of your own way. You can't allow this toughness edge thing that you just want to prove to everyone take over you again, because that's what happened last year. You went into this football game and you did not play Ohio State football. You played Michigan football and they beat you. You have to let Julian Sayin do his thing. Now, the flip side of that is If Michigan gets after this kid early, if they get after him and he enforce one mistake, let's say he throws a pick on the second or third drive for Ohio State, can anyone tell me confidently how he's going to bounce back from that? How he's going to look after that? Because he hasn't faced it pretty much all year. The only time there was really a lot of pressure on this kid, and even in this game, the Texas game, they got within 7 points. It was very late in that contest, and they ran the ball to a victory. At the end of the day, this is absolutely a game. You have to trust Julian Sayin to do what he's done all year, but you got to make sure that he does it efficiently. You got to make sure you get the ball out of his hands. You got to make sure Jeremiah Smith, Carnell Tate, all of the guys on the outside are making plays after the catch against a young secondary. That's going to be your way forward. You got to put it on this kid's shoulders. You also got to make it easy on this kid, which is a hard line to draw. But at the end of the day, this is a really, really interesting game for a number of reasons. Mainly because these teams are closer in talent and ability in everything than they were a year ago, and Michigan got a win a year ago. Playmakers like Andrew Marsh were not on that football team for Michigan a year ago. Is going to be a different vibe. It is going to be a very weird game. It's going to be one of those where which one of these young quarterbacks can step up to the moment more, which one of these coaching staffs can help them out, probably in different ways. Probably Michigan leaning more on the run game, Jordan Marshall going to play in this football game. Some scuttlebutt about Justice Haynes coming back. I'd be surprised, but I wouldn't be surprised if he gave it a shot. I'd be surprised if he played the full length of this game and played it any better than maybe 75-80%. But at the end of the day, you rolled into this season, or you rolled through the season last year. Actually, the Oregon game got a little bit away from you. At the end of the day, Ohio State rolled into this game last year, and they got punched in the mouth. They haven't got punched in the mouth this year. Are you going to win this game? Are you going to allow Michigan early in this game to play their game, to do what they want to do? And if you're Michigan, do that. Don't shy away from who you are. Lean into Jordan Marshall. Lean into all of the running backs you have. Lean into that aggressive identity. You have to control the clock. You have to keep Jeremiah Smith on the sideline. You cannot go bar for bar with this team, mainly because the defense on the other side is an absolute nightmare. I heard the film guy talking about this. Brooks Austin does a great job breaking down the entire sport, but especially Georgia football. But he was talking about this game. There's probably not going to be a tougher challenge in Bryce Underwood's entire career. And I totally agree. This defense is different in every sense of the word. We saw what it did to Arch Manning. We've seen what it's done to every quarterback since then. This is going to be a really tough challenge for Bryce Underwood. The coaching staff in Michigan is going to be uber important. Really, at the end of the day, that's what I'm watching. I'm watching these two coaching staffs, how they react, how they go about their business. Does Ohio State get in their own way in a lot of respects, like they did last year, like they have the last couple of years in this rivalry? I'm going to say no. I'm going to pick Ohio State to win it, 27-14. I think this team is a little bit different. I think something about Ryan Day changed last year. Now, I can't confirm that until Saturday around 3:30 when this game is officially wrapping up. I think he's learned to let his guys be his guys, let Ohio State be Ohio State, and let Michigan be what they're going to be. I think Ohio State's going to win this game. I think they're going to find a way to get it done after 2,000 plus days of not being able to talk any crap to Michigan, really. I think they're finally going to have a shot too. I just think Ryan Day has learned from his mistakes, and I don't think anyone's scoring more than 17 or 20 points on this Ohio State defense until we get deeper into the playoffs, maybe until we get to Indianapolis with Indiana. And then finally, one game that is not being talked about enough. It's early in the week. I shouldn't bury people too early, but number 14 Vanderbilt at number 20 Tennessee. This is a really intense rivalry, guys. It's one that kind of gets lost in the mix of all the incredible rivalries that we do have and are usually ranked matchups. This is not usually a ranked matchup, and it's an incredible one this year. It's a Heisman winner or Heisman potential winner, and Diego Pavia did a little bit of stat padding against Kentucky, but at the end of the day, I don't really have a huge issue with that. A lot of people do that in the Heisman race. It's going to be an interesting game, and the consequences of this game are fascinating to me because Vanderbilt, we've talked about them before. They're sitting at 14. They need some help from in front of them, whether that's in the SEC or outside of it. They need some people to slip up. This would be a massive win, though. A massive data point to show that you are a for-real team. You get another massive win on your schedule, and you move forward into this thing where you're competing with a 10-2 Miami to see who has the better resume. You're competing with a 10-2 maybe Utah or an 11-2 BYU. All stuff that we'll talk about tomorrow, I promise you that. But at the end of the day, Diego Pavi's got a shot here. I don't think Tennessee's defense has a shot to stop him. The problem is I don't know if Vanderbilt's defense has a shot to stop Tennessee's offense. So I don't know what to think about this football game. That's why the over-under is at 65.5. These teams are going to get after each other. There's going to be big plays in this game. Both back ends really struggled to tackle some of the more elite teams that they played. Tennessee struggled to tackle just about everyone they played, but when Vanderbilt played Texas, I believe they had 17 missed tackles in that football game. You can't do that against this group. You can't do that against Chris Brazzell, Brandon Staley, Mike Matthews, incredible difference makers on the outside for Tennessee. If Vanderbilt's back end cannot kind of reel in some of those things, it's going to be a really, really long day. The other part of it is Vanderbilt cannot let Tennessee run the football. So much of what Tennessee does is predicated on bringing guys into the box and then running a post over the backside, bringing a safety down, and then you find a way to get a deep over moving. All of this stuff really works when Deshaun Bishop and Star Thomas and Peyton Lewis are going the way they have in a number of different games throughout this year, early in that Georgia game, and then it kind of fell off a cliff, and we saw what happened late in that one. So can Vanderbilt slow this team down? On the other side, can Tennessee slow this team down? It is going to be a fascinating game to watch. I don't see a massive advantage for either defense over either offense. I don't see a massive one-on-one advantage on either side, really. It's going to be weird. It's really going to come down to just how many of these players are going to make difference-making plays, which one of these quarterbacks is going to step up to the moment. Vanderbilt has not been nearly as good on the road as they have been at home, and I'm going to lean towards Tennessee because of that. I think the home field advantage is enough of a difference maker in this football game that Tennessee wins at 34-31. I think it's a fun affair. I think they get after each other a good bit. I think Diego Pavia does plenty, frankly, to punch his ticket to New York. Although it would make a couple people upset, I think he has more than earned it this year. But at the end of the day, I think the home field advantage is the difference. I think Tennessee makes enough plays and salvages this year at 9-3. I think that would be a more than happy year if I told you in August, as a Tennessee fan, that you were going to go 9-3. Can't imagine you guys would be too upset about that. I might be wrong in that, but at the end of the day, a 9-3 season for Tennessee after all of the turmoil in the offseason, I think it's a massive win. I think Vanderbilt goes down in this spot and makes the committee's job maybe a little bit less complicated on that Sunday. It's going to be an incredible week of football, and I think those three games will have a lot to do with it. I think they're going to be three awesome games. I have a feeling that Texas A&M game is going to be a classic. I don't know why. Just feels that way. With an undefeated Texas A&M coming into town, a spoiler Texas after being number one in the country coming into the season, I just have it has weird written all over it, is where I'll put it right there. But we'll take a break here. And when we come back, we got upset alerts all around the country. I've highlighted 6, probably could have highlighted closer to 10, but we'll cover those in another segment. But we'll get to all of these with LSU, Oklahoma, Virginia Tech, Virginia, and a couple others right after this, so stick with us. Alrighty, welcome back everyone. We just talked about the big games of this upcoming weekend. There's plenty of massive games, but I highlighted Texas A&M. I'm going to lean towards the Aggies in that one. Ohio State, Michigan. I'll pick Ohio State. I'll be the guy that's wrong for, I think, the 5th year in a row when I'm picking this game. And then we'll pick Vanderbilt, Tennessee. I'm leaning towards Tennessee to get that win, move to 9-3, and maybe be in the conversation for the CFP if things get crazy enough. But again, I think those 3-loss SEC teams are firmly out of the mix this year. Let's get to some upset alerts because they are all over the place as we head into this weekend. And if a couple of them happen, the College Football Playoff Committee's job gets a whole lot harder. And let's start with this one. LSU at number 8, Oklahoma. Oklahoma favored by 10.5 in this game. You're 1 win away from getting back to the CFP, and you're playing one of the sadder teams in the country. As much as respect as I have for LSU, and you might have some very good news coming for you right after this game, Nussmeier's likely not playing in this game. A couple other guys are not going to be in it. I don't know if Weeks is playing. I would be surprised if he was out there. It's probably Michael Van Buren under center. It's not going to be great. I don't think this one has much of a shot. If I'm being totally honest, I'll put a 5 out of 10 on it just because I do think that defensive line for LSU has the ability to make this game interesting. If the Oklahoma offensive line struggles, if John Mateer can't get the run game going in any way, there's some mistakes that can be had there. I think Oklahoma's going to be able to play the game they want to. I think LSU kind of plays into that just a little bit, and I think they're going to be able to get this win. Again, I'll put a 5 out of 10 on it. I do think there's a reality where LSU finds a way to win this game, but I don't think it's going to be an easy path. I think it's going to take a ridiculous performance from that defensive line. Virginia Tech at Virginia. Virginia favored by 9.5 in this game. One more before you get to the ACC title. It's been an incredible year for Virginia throughout this one. A couple of injuries as we head into this game, but still a team that you should likely beat. The problem with Virginia Tech is if they can get that run game going, a lot of bad things can happen in a hurry. They can shorten that game down, they can take your pass game fully out of it, and then one mistake totally changes the game. Who's going to play quarterback for Virginia Tech is a bigger question as we head into this one. I'm going to lean towards it being Kyron Drones, but William Watson came in, or Pop Watson, I believe, is his preferred name. But at the end of the day, he came in late in that Miami game, played some pretty good football. So they might lean toward the younger kid. I tend to believe they're going to give Kyron Drones one more go at it to finish off his career there. But I think Virginia gets this one done. I think the pass game is going to have a day. We saw what Carson Beck was capable of doing. I think Chandler Morris is going to be able to do just about the same exact thing, and I think the Virginia Tech offense just not quite consistent enough. I'll put a 6 out of 10 on it. I really do think this rivalry atmosphere has something to it, but I think Virginia being at home helps this one a ton, and they find a way to get a win here and move on to the ACC title. Number 4, Georgia at number 16, Georgia Tech. Well, at Mercedes-Benz Stadium, but still, it is a home game for Georgia Tech in this one. Georgia favored by 14.5. It's clean old-fashioned hate. It's the game that I grew up right in the middle of, grew up a Georgia Tech fan, went to Georgia for college. It's been a weird one to watch the last couple of years with my family, but at the end of the day, there's a number of years where Georgia should roll in this game. I think this is one of those years. There's a number of years where that doesn't come to fruition, where Georgia Tech finds a way to win or they find a way to make it close like we saw last year. It just got a weird vibe to it. It always has. It probably always will. But the Georgia Tech defense, it's not good, and they can't slow the run. And if you can't slow the run against Georgia, it's one of the better run blocking units in the entire country. They're probably going to go for 300. If you are not set up to totally stop that run, and the problem is if you totally set up to stop the run, you don't have enough guys on the back end to guard these guys. It's going to be a really long day. For the Georgia Tech defense, I really don't see another reality there unless Blake Gideon, the defensive coordinator, puts together a perfect game plan. It's going to be a nightmare. I think Georgia's going to win this one. I think Buster Faulkner is good enough to make this a 4-quarter game. He has had his Kirby Smart's number as much as any other offensive coordinator in the entire country. I think the physicality of Georgia takes over in the fourth quarter of this game. They probably win it by about 14 points, but I'm putting a 7 out of 10 on this one, frankly, because I don't think this game should ever be below that. I watched a bad Georgia Tech team beat that Georgia team in 2014 and in 2016. This is a better Georgia Tech team. So we'll see what happens in this one. I think Georgia finds a way to win. It's just weird enough to make me think that it's not a slam dunk. Oregon on the road at Washington, minus 6.5 in this one. Oregon's in such a weird spot. They just got a massive win over USC. They're in a great position, 10-1 going into their final week. If they lose this game, are you confident they're making the CFP? In the sea of 10-2 teams that we could very well have with Miami, with Vanderbilt, with Utah, with all of the other teams, we're confident that Oregon is absolutely in at 10-2. I tend to believe they would be. I think it would be very, very much up for debate in that room. We'll see how that unfolds. But Washington is a team that is probably a little bit, I don't want to say underrated, because they missed a number of opportunities this year to be a much better team. But at the end of the day, this could very well be a top 25 team in a couple hours. When the CFP rankings do come out, this could very well be a top 25 matchup. And this Washington offense is scary. They have the ability to put up points on just about anyone. Can Oregon follow suit of what they did last week? And Dante Moore, can he continue to rise to the occasion? It's going to be a tough atmosphere. I think Oregon gets it done. I'll put a 7 out of 10 on this one as well. I think that Washington offense is really, really dangerous. They can do a number of really incredible things and make this one a little bit of a shootout, but I like the Ducks. I think they're rolling right now. I think even with the injuries, they're going to be in a really good shape, and depending on what happens in the game, they could very well be on their way to Indianapolis. I think they're secretly hoping they're not on their way and they're just on their way to the playoff for a home playoff game. Number 6, Ole Miss, 7.5-point favorites at Mississippi State. I've talked about it already, but if Ole Miss loses this football game and then the next day Lane Kiffin decides he's going to coach LSU, I don't think they make the CFP. I really don't. I don't think there's a world where they're going to be able to keep them in over a 10-2 Miami, over a 10-2 Utah, over all of these teams that are going to be right outside, maybe even over a 9-3 Tennessee or Texas. As crazy as that sounds, I really do think that would have the impact. I think an 11-1 team would be more than fine, though. So let's try to find a way to win this one, and then you really won't have to worry about that. You'll just only have to worry about losing the best coach you've ever had. That's something we can talk about in time. But at the end of the day, this is a matchup where I think both offenses are going to be able to roll. Mississippi State's going to lean on the run the way they always have. Ole Miss really struggles to stop the run. Mississippi State is very aggressive defensively because they don't quite have the dudes. If Lane Kiffin gets that, Trinidad Chambliss will be decisive and on time and accurate, and it will be a very long day for Mississippi State. I think they're going to go back and forth in this one. I don't know how much of a hangover or how much of an impact the Lane Kiffin stuff is going to have on this Ole Miss team. It hasn't yet. I know that. And we've gotten to the end of the season. I don't know if it's going to have them in a tough spot in this one. I think they could lose this game. I really do. I don't know how much of it would have to do with the Lane Kiffin distraction of it all, but I do think there's a reality here where Mississippi State gets it done. I'm going to put an 8 out of 10 on this one. I think there's a very real reality where we see Mississippi State knock out Ole Miss from the CFP, and then Ole Miss loses their coach, and a season that looked perfect a month ago totally falls apart for the Rebels. I don't know which way I'm leaning. I'll lean towards Ole Miss, I suppose. This one's very, very real and could go downhill in a hurry for the Rebels. And then finally, number 10, Alabama, -6.5 at Auburn, the Iron Bowl at night in Jordan-Hare Stadium, a haunted place. If you were to ask Nick Saban, this is a weird one. It's a special game in a lot of different ways, and Alabama is playing a team that, like a lot of teams in the SEC, has a ridiculously good defensive line. They are going to force this game into the hands of Ty Simpson. He's been really good. A lot of the year, there's been moments where defenses, especially elite defenses, have been able to push him into tough positions, and frankly, his team does plenty good of that, not helping him out enough, if I'm being totally honest, but at the end of the day, this one's going to be Ty Simpson's game to go win. On the other side, it's probably going to be Ashton Daniels, is what it sounds like. No more Deuce Knight. I sort of get that. Now, Ashton Daniels is a whole lot like Tommy Castellanos from a skill standpoint, from all of the different things he can do running the football. If there's openings to run the football in this game, he will take advantage of them, and maybe the Alabama defense has a tough day. I think Alabama wins this one. I think that. At night in Jordan-Hare, you cannot be sure of anything. Auburn has won a lot of games that they had no business winning in a lot of ways. So with all due respect to Auburn, at the end of the day, this is just one of those games that you can never have anything less than a 9 out of 10 on the upset meter on, because at night in Jordan-Hare, just weird stuff happens. If you don't believe me, go ask anyone in Crimson Tide right now. It is a very, very weird place, but it's one of those that you absolutely could get a big-time upset. Again, Alabama would be out of this thing. I feel very confident. I think that goes without saying in a lot of ways. They would have 3 losses. I think they would be firmly out of the CFP if they were to lose this one. Auburn love to be the team that knocks them out. It's going to be a weird week. I can almost promise you one of the games that we just talked about is going to be an upset. I think one of the games that we didn't talk about is probably going to be an upset as well, just because there's plenty of other ones that we're going to talk about right after this break. That could get a little bit weird. We're going to talk about Utah at Kansas, Arizona State, Miami, Pitt, a massive one in the ACC, the Palmetto Bowl over there in South Carolina. We'll talk about Florida State in a very weird position going into this year, a massive SMU Cal game in weird fashion, but at the end of the day, a massive one over there as well. We'll get to all of it right after this, so stick with us. Alrighty, welcome back everyone. We just talked about the upset alerts all around the country. We had 6 different ones. We got a couple more for you in this one because there's plenty of other games we got to talk about. There's plenty of games that could totally change what the CFP looks like going into this weekend. But let's go and jump into this and let's talk about Utah going to Kansas for a game that is going to be a weird one. Utah favored by 12.5 in this one heading into it. They're in a weird spot. I talked about it earlier this week. I don't know what the path is for Utah to make a CFP other than abject chaos all around them, both including Miami and the teams in front of them. I don't know how they find a way in, especially if BYU finds a way to win this weekend. I don't think they find a way in. That being said, they got to take care of a really tough Kansas team first. Both these teams are going to run the football. I think it looks a whole lot like what we saw at Kansas State last week. Now, I can't promise 51-47 or anything crazy like that. I like to think Utah can pull this one off. It is such an up and down team this year, especially defensively. There's not much confidence I can have in that one. If Jalen Daniels shows up and makes big plays, it's just one of those days. So I think it's very much on the table that Kansas wins this game. I'll lean towards Utah, but it is not a heavy lean. Arizona at number 25, Arizona State. These rankings might change a little bit tonight, but Arizona favored by 1.5 going into this game. A really great rivalry, one that kind of gets overlooked in a lot of ways when you talk about the Iron Bowl and the game and Lone Star Showdown coming back the last couple of years. This one's gotten a little bit lost. It's a massive one. And Arizona State, you can still go to the Big 12 championship. If BYU falls to UCF, they're probably not going to fall to UCF. We'll talk about that in a second. But you can find a way to win this game. You're on your way to Arlington for the second year in a row with a chance to go back to the CFP. It falls on Jeff Sims' shoulders. As crazy as that sounds, that's not a situation you probably expected to be in, but that's exactly where you are. We'll see how this one unfolds. I think it's going to be a really, really fun one to cap off an incredible Friday of football that we get. I think Arizona finds a way. I think Noah Fafita is playing really high-level football. I like Arizona State. They've struggled at different moments this season. I think it's just one of those games where the offensive firepower for Arizona is just enough to take them over the Sun Devils here. Number 13, Miami at Pitt this upcoming weekend. Miami minus 6.5. Heading into this one, it's one of the more consequential games of the entire weekend. Pitt could find their way into the ACC Championship, could find their way firmly into the CFP conversation. Miami could make the Notre Dame-Miami conversation much, much harder for the committee, or could fall all the way out of it and make the committee's job a whole lot easier. I think it's going to be a really fun game. There is a massive variable that favors Pitt. It's going to be nearly freezing in Pittsburgh when this game kicks off. I think like last year, Miami's going to fall short. I think they have a really talented quarterback that they're going to play much like they played Kyle McCord last year. They're going to knock him out of CFP contention. I think Pitt wins this game. And I think the CFP committee really gives a sigh of relief. I think they didn't want to make this decision, and I don't think they're going to be forced to. I think Pitt finds a way to win this one. I don't know if they make the ACC championship. That depends on SMU and Virginia. If one of those teams loses, Pitt will be in this thing. If they don't, this game will just be knocking Miami out and helping the committee out just a little bit. I think Pitt will do exactly that. I think Mason Heinschel has a huge game, and Pitt finds a way to get another massive win. The Palmetto Bowl. I wasn't getting through a rivalry weekend preview without getting to this game. It's a really fun one. It's been a rough year for both these teams. This one's going to have juice. I absolutely promise you that. That crowd is going to be involved. Even with it being a Thanksgiving weekend, I promise you, there's going to be plenty of juice in this one. I think South Carolina does it. I think Lenore Sellers plays his best game of the year. I don't have a lot to go on here. Let's be honest, I don't think a lot of people have a lot to go on with these two teams at this very moment. I think Lenore Sellers plays his best game of the year. I think South Carolina finds a way to win. You're in 5-7, so I'm not going to try to I won't say that word. I'm not going to try to make you feel that it was a whole lot better than it was. It was a tough year, but I think you're going to find a way to at least have bragging rights for another 365 days on the back of an incredible performance from Lenore Sellers, maybe his last as a Gamecock, and we can talk about that in the offseason when we get there. UCF at number 11, BYU. BYU favored by 17.5 heading into this one, 1 p.m. on Saturday. A little bit of a weird kickoff there. BYU did it. They found their way to the final game of the season with a shot at the Big 12 title, something that I would not have picked them to do at the beginning of the season. even with Bear Bachmeier playing good football, I was very worried about this team just being a little bit too young, especially at the quarterback position, obviously, and just not being able to win some of these close games. They've been able to do it all. And a lot of the games that I thought were going to be close were not all that close. So a lot of juice for BYU. We'll look at what the CFP odds look like for them probably tomorrow and more after this game if they do win it and go on to the championship. Are they firmly in? Would a loss take them out? Would a 14-point loss take them out but not a 3-point loss? All of that is up in the air. There's plenty of time to talk about that next week. We will get into all of that. If they can find a way to win this one, I think they will. I think they'll run all over this team. I think LJ Martin will have another great day, and they'll probably be able to sit him in the fourth quarter. If I'm being totally honest, I think BYU rolls in this game, and they find their way to Arlington, and then we'll see what that reality is with them in Texas Tech and at the end of the year. I don't know what the committee would do. I know it's a whole lot tougher of a decision than it was last year. Florida State at Florida. Again, another rivalry that can't be overlooked no matter the circumstances. The circumstances aren't great, but they're very interesting in a lot of respects. How does Florida State react to Mike Norvell being back next year? Because I don't know it's such an interesting game for so many reasons, mainly because you could make a very good argument, probably 75% of the people, whether it's players or coaches, that are going to be on that field involved in this game on Saturday are not going to be in that locker room, in that program in 2026. It's going to be a weird game. It's going to be a weird game with a lot of rosters that are in it, maybe a lot of coaching staffs that are in it, maybe some teams that are playing for just about nothing. Now, Florida State, you can win this game and get to a bowl game. So there's something to play for, I suppose. I just think Florida State makes way too many mistakes. I think when you give Florida's athleticism, you give Florida's talent enough chances, they're going to make enough plays. I think DJ Lagway finds a way to win this one. It's just a really weird game because all of the guys standing on the sidelines, probably right at the end of this game, are on the phone with their agents. As upsetting as that might sound, that's kind of the reality heading into this one. UCLA at number 15 USC. USC favored by 21.5 in this football game. It's been a cool year for UCLA in a lot of ways. It's been a weird year for UCLA in a lot of ways. I don't know what to make of this one. They would love to put a dagger in their rival and make it not a 9-3 season, which I think would be very successful for this USC team. An 8-4 would sting a whole lot worse. I can promise you that. I don't think they have enough juice to get it done. If I'm being totally honest, I don't think Nico Iamaleava is going to play in this football game. If he does, he's not going to be 100%. I'm going to lean pretty firmly towards USC. I think they roll in this game, and we'll decide what people think about Lincoln Riley in the offseason. I think the world of him right now. I think he's done an incredible job with this football team. I get it, 9-3 is not the goal around USC. It probably should have been this year, given what you had last year. But at the end of the day, I think they find a way to get this one, get to 9-3, and we'll have the conversation in the offseason of what that means for USC moving forward. SMU at Cal. SMU favored by 13.5. They need to win it. They find a way to win. They're back in the ACC title. And I don't think a lot of people know that fact. I think a lot of people assume that SMU is just kind of hanging out, doing their thing. They got one loss in conference. If they win this one, they are on their way to Charlotte with another chance to go back to the CFP. Crazy. If their first 2 years in the ACC, they're the ones representing them, probably from the 12 seed if they were to make it there. But at the end of the day, this Cal team is very dangerous. It's a team that absolutely can put something together and make something really interesting with an interim coach. Nick Rolovich has taken over there. Brian Harson's still the offensive coordinator there, so not a lot of change in the offense. I think SMU finds a way to get this one done. I think it's going to be a weird one. I think Cal has enough juice in this game. I think JKS has enough big plays to be made. But I think SMU does enough. I think they find a way to get to the ACC championship. I think they'll play Virginia, and I think a lot of people will be very confused when they turn on their television. But at the end of the day, the question becomes now, where does SMU get ranked tonight? Because if they're not ranked above JMU, if they're not ranked above Tulane, is the reality of the ACC being fully left out still firmly on the table? We can talk about that tomorrow. Once the rankings come out, we'll break it all down and we'll see where we all sit. But at the end of the day, I think SMU wins this one and goes and battles Virginia for the ACC title for the second year in a row. Number 9, Notre Dame at Stanford. Notre Dame is favored by 32.5 in this football game. I'm not going to waste a lot of your time here. I think Notre Dame is going to roll in this football game. To me, it is a can Jeremiah Love do enough to make it to New York City type of game? Can he go for 180 yards and 3 scores? Can he go for 200 yards and 2 scores? Can he turn heads? Because if he can, then he's probably going to New York City. If he can't, then I think all of these quarterback matchups that are going to happen over the next couple of weeks. Marcel Reed has a huge chance this weekend. Diego Pavia, the exact same. And then you might have a Big Ten battle that is going to put one or both of those guys in New York City at the end of the day. You got to make a statement here. If you're Jeremiah Love, I think everyone understands that. I'd love to see Stanford pull this off. Love Andrew Luck on the sideline. A lot of juice. I think Notre Dame finds a way to get it done now. If Notre Dame loses late on Saturday, that conversation in that CFP room either gets a whole lot easier or a whole lot more complicated, with a lot of teams sitting there at 9-3 or 10-2 with a very good argument as we head into the final week. I don't think it's going to be a problem. I think Notre Dame wins this one very comfortably, and I think Jeremiah Love does enough to get to New York City at the very least. And then the group of 6 games, all of the games that will be massive down the stretch of this season. Navy and Memphis face off on Thursday on Thanksgiving Day. Going to be a really, really fun one. Navy's got to win, and then they got to get a loss from either North Texas or Tulane. North Texas gets a Temple team that is very, very frisky on Friday. We'll see if they can pull that one off. I tend to believe this one's going to stay chalk, and you're going to see North Texas against Tulane. Tulane gets Charlotte on Saturday. I think they handle business there. And you have those two battling for the American Championship. Can JMU stay in it? They get Coastal Carolina this weekend. I tend to believe they're going to win that one. Will they be able to get back into the CFP conversation? Where will they be ranked tonight is going to be a huge topic of debate. Oregon State, Washington State. The second time they've played this year, Oregon State got the first one 10-7. Got to imagine we have more points for us this time around. We'll see if Washington State can make this thing. They just cut the trophy in half. I don't know how that would work. At the end of the day, going to be a fun one. Over there in Pullman, a huge one in Conference USA. Western Kentucky against Jacksonville State could just be a game that we see next week as well for that championship, because these are the two top teams in this conference. Going to be a really fun one there. And then San Diego State at New Mexico on that Friday. Really fun one over there in the Mountain West. Absolutely one that will decide probably who plays UNLV. Both these teams still firmly in the mix. I think the winner of this one is going to play UNLV and Dan Mullen in the championship game over there. I don't think it'll have to have an impact on the CFP, but you never know what's going to happen in these final weekends. Rivalry weekend is by far my favorite weekend of the entire year of college football, and a lot of people have, I don't want to say that. A lot of energy has been taken out of this weekend because Ohio State lost last year and they found a way to go win a national title, and now everyone's got to tell you that these games really don't matter. If you're already in the CFP, it doesn't matter at all. I promise. No big deal. You can go lose. Doesn't matter. It really matters. I can promise you, I grew up in a lot of these rivalries that I just talked about, whether it's through friends or through my own family or through my own fandoms. It really matters, and I still believe it really matters. I think every Ohio State player, every Ohio State fan is going to sleep every night before that game getting a little bit more excited. I think Texas A&M, they're looking for that big moment over their rival that they haven't had in about 15 years now. It's been quite a while since Texas A&M has been able to top Texas. This would be a huge moment for that program. I think a lot of juice has been taken out of this rivalry weekend because people just say the juice has been taken out. When those teams get on the football field, there's plenty of hatred, there's plenty of juice, there's plenty of hitting, and it's going to be awesome to watch. We got a great Friday. We got a great game on Thursday with Navy Memphis. We got a couple of great games on Friday. And then we got the game on Saturday. It's going to be an incredible, incredible weekend. Thank you so much for tuning in to this edition of Just Another College Football Podcast. We'll be back tomorrow. We got to talk tomorrow before we get into Thanksgiving. We got to talk about the CFP rankings. We got to talk about what in the world is going on over in the ACC when we talk about their championship. There's about a million different possibilities for what could happen over there. We'll go through all of the championship results, what could happen, what teams could be facing off in those championship games. We'll try to get into some of the CFP stuff, but it might be better to just wait 1 week until we get all of these results. And then obviously best bets as we get into the final weekend. Won't give out my record because it's not going very well, but at the end of the day, I'll give out my best bets for this weekend. But thank you so much for tuning in. Please do like, subscribe, comment. It means the world to me, helps me out a ton. But we'll be back tomorrow, and we'll talk about a lot of the other stuff that's going to happen after I get off here with the rankings, all the different upsets, and we'll get you fully ready for Rivalry Weekend as we head into an incredible weekend of football. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.